Hi everyone, James here from F9. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Let's start to get through them. I'm going to have to do multiple videos on all of this, but I'm hoping that you'll all find an awful lot of very useful information. Okay, first one from Christoph H. I find the mid-range in what I write is really lacking. It's tough to get the balance of removing the woodiness, but still keeping that 500 Hertz or so filler frequency without it sounding too muddy. It could be the percussion style or just removing too much. Okay, the lower mids are complex, but the first thing I would always say is if you're struggling always in one particular frequency area is check your monitoring. Things like surfaces cause reflections from speakers depending on where they're positioned, room position of your setup, etc., etc. The ceiling, all of that kind of thing will play havoc in the lower mids and the bass areas. So if you're really struggling at that point, it could just be something as simple as this. So there's a paradigm in computers that is basically, if you put garbage in, you will get garbage out. And it's the same with our brains when it comes to audio. If you're listening to flawed information, in other words, if the sound coming to your ears is being coloured by the environment, normally reflections on bits and pieces, then you can't do your very best job. Now, there's two ways to check this. First of all, see if you know anybody who's got the SonarWorks system and see if you can borrow it and kind of quickly install it and do a quick calibration on your speakers. Now, that obviously eventually might mean that you'll have to spend some money and get the SonarWorks system, and I'm kind of on the fence about whether it really helps or not, but it will certainly clear out lower mid problems like that. The other thing that you can do quite quickly to test whether there's a problem is to get yourself the best pair of headphones that you can find, either within your own collection or amongst your friends, and have a little go at mixing some of the mid-range frequencies and see if the problem is persisting in the headphones. Now, what's different about the headphones is that you're in a controlled acoustic environment created by the manufacturer. Now, this is going to come up on an awful lot of these answers because I'm a big proponent of using headphones alongside monitors, not just by themselves. But it's a good kind of test for something like this because it will instantly show you whether the problem is just within your speaker situation or whether it's replicating itself within the headphones as well. Now, if you are having the same problem on both systems, in other words, headphones and monitors, then you know, yes, it's something to do with what you're doing. And at that point, you can go, okay, so we've got a mid-range problem. If you're then kind of firing all of your attention onto that, you may be missing the point. Sometimes what it's best to do, particularly with lower mids, is to make sure that you have the real subs and the highs working really well. And then you'll find an awful lot of the problems in that area will kind of dissipate away. Now, it takes practice and it takes discipline to do, but it's something I really, really recommend. Sometimes putting all of your energy into that one area is just detrimental for the result. So have a look around it. So in other words, lower mids causing the problems. Okay, how's my bass and how's my top? If I change them and get them a little bit more smilier, do all of the problems in the mid-range disappear? This one's from It's Me, Vlad. Can you tell me about promotion of commercial dance music? It's really interesting how it works in the UK. So I'm kind of out of those major release circles, but I still know people that are very much plugged into it. And in the UK, we've got a kind of multi-tiered system. And depending on where you come from in an age group, you will probably be thinking you have to go one way or the other. So I had someone ask me the other day from my era, how do I get a radio plugger? And I was like, don't get a radio plugger at the early stages of a record. There is 0 point. And he was like, why? And I was like, okay, so this is how traditionally it used to work from my era. You did club promotion. If that kind of broke through in the clubs, then you would have kind of label interest because you'd end up getting on charts, and all of the dance labels were obviously always looking at the charts. From that, you could then potentially go to radio, and you could not have a hit, in my era anyway, without radio. Now, every time that I speak to people that are plugged in or working for the major labels, and I always say to them, so how are you breaking records? And I know what the answer is. It's 2 words, TikTok. That's it. That is all you have to know. If you want to promote a modern record, a modern dance record, to the commercial audience and get it into charts, that's how you do it. And here's something that you might not know. All of the majors are looking for things that are exploding on TikTok every single week. And I know this because even though I'm out of it myself, I know people that are plugged into the parts that have to finish these records off and put them together. And the great thing is, sampling is back. The amount of sample records that are being created by people and that are kind of blowing up on TikTok is enormous, and all of the majors are chasing these things. Now, that can be problematic if you're of a certain age group. It's no good for me. I'm nearly 50. Nobody wants to see a 50-year-old bloke with grey hair mucking about on TikTok. If that is the case, and say you're a producer and you may be around the same area of age as me, then your best bet is to find someone who is DJing and active in that area and link up with them and put productions together with a kind of traditional DJ and studio partnership. That, what I say, is a very powerful thing for people actually at my age. Don't try to do TikTok yourself. If your brain is going, I just can't handle this, then don't. Find people that are. Now, that may be a kind of, how can you put it? People may actually look down on that and say, well, that's not how the industry should be. That's how it is, okay? So you've got to, if you're going to play the game and you want to get into the game, you've got to understand that this is how it's being done. Whether you like it or not, that's the case. Okay, this one's from AudioStem. James, how do you get past the initial stage of a track? Once you've got drum layers, bass, pads, etc., how do you decide which extra layers to add? With the sheer amount of tools available, it can be somewhat overwhelming to know what to add or what to keep to make tracks interesting. Any tips? Yeah, my first one is stop trying to add stuff once you've got the basic thing put together. You have something that you're happy with and that you're content with. What you do not want to do is then dive into more plugins and more sounds to try and layer up immediately. The reason being is that you've stopped at a specific point for a very good reason. You know it's working. What you want to do is drop everything and then start to arrange. Now, that may sound ridiculous, but instant arrangement is what will get you out of these 8-bar loop or 16-bar loop problems where you just can't seem to break out of it. One thing I would always recommend is take a record in the genre that you like, listen through and write down its arrangement, and then replicate it, even with just the 8-bar loop that you have. Now, the first thing that you will notice is you probably don't have enough information. And if it depends on which style that you're working. If you're more in a club track, you can probably repeat the main loop that you've got, taking individual elements in and out. It doesn't matter whether there's tons of stuff missing. It just matters that you get an arrangement, because your brain is constantly processing all sorts of insecurities. And the first one will be oh, I've got that loop again. I'm stuck. Oh my God, I can't get past it. If you force yourself to create an arrangement, no matter how rubbish it is when you play it back, you automatically have an entire track, or the basis of an entire track, on your page. And it's like having scaffolding. You don't build a house just by lumping all the bits together and then worrying about the windows. You have to put all of the scaffolding up around, build the kind of frame of the thing, and then you do the finishing. So consider it as building a house. Put the walls up, put the arrangement together so you've got the shape of a house, and then start to fill all the different individual bits up. Now, one real tip I've got on this is, if you just don't think that you've got enough material from your one thing, then take what you've got, say 8 or 16 bars, copy it, and then on the MIDI tracks that you're running all of this from, change all of the sounds, but playing the same parts, and see what kind of interaction you can get. And the moment you start having these areas of contrast, you can start to build an arrangement, because arrangement is all about contrast. Now, I will have to do a completely separate video on this, but I hope that's at least given you a bit of a starting point.